Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the SIM Online Masterclass Series Season 4. I'm Stephanie from the Local Engagement Team. And today, the topic for today is actually on the power of simulations for real learning. And please do take note that this session is being recorded and we'll be uploading the recording to the SIM YouTube channel 1 week after the session ends. And just a general reminder before we officially begin the session, if you do have any questions along the way, just feel free to type them in the chat below and our speaker and our staff will assist you in answering them accordingly. There will also be a short briefing right after the masterclass on the Master of Science in Professional Accountancy and Master of Science in Accounting and Financial Management programs. So do stay tuned for that. And now let me introduce the speaker for today. Lindsay Chu is an associate professor specializing in accounting education at UCL School of Management and the program director of the Global MSc in Professional Accountancy. She is also the school's UCL Academic Connected Learning Lead, responsible for implementing and managing UCL's online education initiative in finance education. So that is why this also builds upon her role as one of the school's e-learning champions. And Nancy also has a very keen personal interest in using learning technologies as within the accounting and finance education and is extensively involved in the ongoing development and applications of such technologies in the higher education and executive education sectors. And not only that, Lindsay also has a proven track record of delivering what can be a dry subject of accounting or finance in a very innovative and way to deliver the knowledge. So without further ado, let me now welcome our Associate Professor Lindsay to actually go through this whole masterclass and for an interactive session with her. Lindsay, over to you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session. Stephanie gave me, that was quite a long introduction, and I recognize most of it. I think one of the most difficult things is probably the last bit where Stephanie said that trying to make a dry subject a little bit more entertaining or interesting, dare we say a little bit sexy. In the School of Management, I am into everything to do with learning technologies and making sure that the education that we provide is more than just being taught at, but actually that learners partake very actively in their learning journey. So it's all about that having the that motivation, that steerage for yourself to want to create more than just learning from a textbook, learning from your professor, and just digesting the information and not really truly understanding what it is that you are learning, and then thinking about lifelong learning. So that's one of the one of the big passions of mine personally. The other passion is probably food. Being from my heritage being from Malaysia, and my surname being Chu, so they go sort of hand in hand. So for this session, I as Stephanie said, we're going to be looking at sort of the power of simulations for real learning, and I think it'll be interesting to know, in your own mind, what you believe real learning is for you. As I kind of go through the session, you'll start to realize that actually learning is a very subjective thing. The acquisition of knowledge is very subjective, but actually the way in which you journey to get there is a very personal thing, and it can often be very different for different people based upon their age, based upon their career, based upon their ultimate goals or immediate goals that they would like to try and achieve. So having that sort of mindset, we need to rethink the way that we are teaching and learning. We need to rethink how we engage people, not just students, but actually people who are interested in continuing their personal and professional development, and really understanding that every day is a learning opportunity. So learning something new every day is a wonderful thing, and I wholeheartedly actively try to engage with that. So just one way that we can actually do that is through simulations. And I'm just going to share this presentation PowerPoint with you on screen so that you can get an idea of what we're talking about in its entirety. So that's what this subject is all about. So I'll give you a little bit about the theory. So we would be nothing without a bit of theory. So the understanding of how to understand conceptually, cognitively, the way in which things work, but then also using that as a departure point, using that as a platform to really make sense of everything in the world. So my sort of agenda for us today is thinking about some of those challenges that you and I, as active learners, as curators of our own library of what we're going to take forward in life, both in work and also in our professional capacities. And then I'll obviously give you a bit of the sort of the challenges associated with that and the pedagogy as well. And then talk about what simulations can actually bring to the forefront of our learning journeys. For any of you who are working at the moment, I think you really need to evaluate for yourselves and for your organizationals productiveness, efficiency, the way in which you work together, the idea of bringing simulated activities into the workplace to help develop your future leaders, your future managers. So it's not just about, what we can do on a program of study, but actually think about executive education, senior leadership programs as well. And I'll talk a bit about a success story of where we've implemented it on a few avenues and seen sort of a really great results from that. So as I've kind of outlined already, there are many challenges for learners today, not least because of the pandemic. If we're really honest, the way we have been for the last 2 years has sort of shaped the way that we will consume information, how we learn, where we learn, and how quickly we learn or how slowly we learn. And I think, technology is a huge part of that. The fact that we're on Zoom today and having a live session, which will be recorded and then available thereafter, is all facilitated by technology. So incorporating that into our learning journey so that it's just second nature is, a removal from what we have been used to over the last 20, 25 years, or even longer. So as I said right at the very start, learning is a very subjective thing. It's a subjective art in that sense. So the way in which I learn will be very different to the way you learn, that will be very different to the way your parents learned, to the way our children will learn. So the way we are using technology, the way we are using information, the time that we have will create a very focused, a very personal and unique learning journey for every single one of us. And that has to take place within a classroom or an online environment or within just an asynchronous set of materials, whichever way that we're actually trying to digest information and learn to our best ability, we have to recognize that there is always going to be a subjective side to things. So we need more than just the traditional transmission of knowledge. Ironically, me sort of sitting here and talking to you today about that, but actually just really thinking about these things that I'm saying to you should shape your motivation to want to learn in a different way as well. And I think being open to different perspectives, being open to different methods and processes are not just applicable within education, but they are definitely applicable within the professional context too. So what we need to do is kind of make sure that during our learning journey, we are actually trying to make sense of meaning. And we're going to do this through our shared challenges that we have as a group, as a team, as a class, as a workforce. And we will build on our experiences. We will build on our different perspectives, and we'll collectively kind of come together and effectively move from a passive sort of learning environment and style to a very much more active learning style. And therefore we can create knowledge together. We can construct knowledge together. Okay, so that's effectively what, you know, people, us, we are dealing with on this day-to-day basis. And as long as we can have that in mind, then we shouldn't really be just directing ourselves to reading textbooks, reading articles, and trying to think. We should be doing a lot more with the time that we have available to us, and go from this passive to very much active. I know culturally in certain parts of the world, we take a back seat. We think about, you know, the professor being the person who is the one who knows everything and has to lead us. And that is to some extent still applicable. However, I think we can take much more of an active role in the way that we shape our learning journey. And then, you know, that falls on you as professional individuals to try and make that happen. Just to give you a bit of the background for the pedagogy. So a little bit of the boring stuff here, but you know, all of this is very grounded in educational research. So if you were to go and look for literature and look into what we refer to as Instructivism, Constructivism, and then through to Connectivism, you'll see a few of these famous names within education literature, since the 1930s and 1900s, and they've journeyed through to really give us some good insights into the way in which human beings, as social beings, actually create knowledge and make sure that we can actually have a good learning experience. So Vygotsky, very much sort of the founding area here, but then anyone who knows anything about teaching and education, what is shown is a good name to look up to as well. So Instructivism, as I said before, you know, it's the sage on the stage, it's the professor, and they transmit all of that information to you. It's very much educator centered, and the way in which we transmit data has been very traditional since, you know, we started to have university education, and indeed in terms of primary education and secondary education, you know, it's still very much of that nature. So, you know, who is the main beneficiary of this? Is it really the educator, the professor themselves, sitting here at the front, standing here at the front, and everyone hopefully trying to pay attention, but ultimately, you know, they are very passive learners. There may be some predetermined activities in class to help try to bring things to life, but ultimately, you know, it's all educator centered, and the learners themselves are not really that engaged. So they tend to really focus on assessments, and they have less of an ability to really appreciate the open-endedness that explorations can provide, that can really help to provide true meaning to what we are trying to understand. However, we know that class sizes, Zoom rooms have capacity. Zoom rooms have greater capacity sometimes than physical ones, but nonetheless, you know, you still have a wall of black squares with names on, and you never really see the people. So again, that's a very passive way of learning. So I think, you know, the pandemic has actually created even more of a bubble where people are sitting back and not really taking charge of their learning, and creating a very one-way type of learning experience. And if you think about it, even with that technology, it's kind of backtracking to a time when the professor was everything to the learning experience, when actually it should also be the learners themselves. So we move towards sort of constructivism and kind of getting together and really trying to collaborate, try to make sure that active learning is happening. And your professor is actually going to be the facilitator. Your trainer of executive education is that facilitator. You, as the learner, has to create the environment, the ecology in which you can actually define, you can explore your problems and your goals, and really try and find the the best way forward. So this particular stance, or this school of thought, is about the relationships that we build that are conducive for learning, and basically, as the name says, to construct knowledge together. And then hopefully kind of moving even further into that sphere is where we get into connectivism. This diagram, it's not very clear on the slide here, but nonetheless, it kind of hopefully shows the idea that everyone is connected to everything, and all of the learning takes place not just around a table and a flip chart, but actually even with technology across borders. And I think we need to exploit that. I think we need to take full advantage of what Zoom can provide, but also don't miss out on the rich interaction that we can have in the classroom. So all your learners can be connected, but they are also self-facilitators. So really taking charge, really understanding that they have a role to play, and it's not just being told what to do or what to think or what to learn. So here we are being proactive as opposed to just active, and definitely not passive. So you, as the author of your own learning, should have that empowerment and real passion to truly explore in a very safe environment. You know, education is such that we are allowed to explore, we are allowed to make mistakes, and actually have a better learning experience if we are making mistakes, as long as we are reflecting and as long as we are truly learning from those mistakes. But we're also helping others, so helping others to also author their own learning journeys. And that interaction, that participation cannot really be gained if it's just one-way traffic, if it's just one-way interaction with your facilitator, as in terms of your trainer or your professor. So our relationships are very fluid between us, between our peers, between our professional colleagues, and that's so important. We should never be dismissive of people who also have so much to offer, in terms of the conversation, the discussion, and to create such an organic experience that you cannot get from a textbook. So we are sharing interests and opportunity by being in the same class, by being on the same program, by being on the same training program. So you already have a common ground, and it's to create something organic and amazing that you will truly learn and have a better experience. And this is kind of based upon Vygotsky's social constructivism. So if any of you are interested in the sociology and psychology side of things, then have a look at this guy here. So real learning, as I've just said, and littered through that whole section there on pedagogy, is about trying to create more than just discipline-specific information and knowledge. It is also about those peripheral aspects that employers, that your sponsors, that you yourself would want to develop as a lifelong learner. So we always have to be prepared. We have to be looking ahead. We have to continuously build upon what we have and take that forward and actually add to what we have as well. The fact that you're on a session like this also proves the point that you also want to improve. You also want to widen your skill set and actually build even more complex skills than you currently have. We can always improve. So domain-specific knowledge is great, but actually all of these other areas, critical thinking, problem solving, the communication, the collaboration, all of those have to be practiced. They cannot necessarily just be learned by reading, right? You have to do in order to really truly understand and truly participate in the whole learning sphere. So real learning is all about that, not just what we can read, right? I think this should resonate with quite a lot of you on that basis, because, just sitting and reading, just sitting listening, probably not the best experience. So problem solving also comes from this, being able to be that critical thinker, being able to be that person who is able to synthesize a lot of information, but use it in an applied situation. So problem solving is all about that. So in that broader sense, it is about what's going on up here. It's that cognitive processing, which is obviously going to be aimed at achieving a goal. But there's no one set answer. There is no one set method. There are different ways that you can get to the solution or a solution. And I think for us who are used to very static, there is only one answer, it can be very difficult to accept when there are multiple different, very valid, very usable, very workable solutions to a set of the same problems. But if the path or the method isn't so obvious, I think a few of us probably get a little bit out of our comfort zone, and that's okay. But being able to deal with that is actually part of the skill set that we should be developing as critical thinkers as well. So monitoring, having a good go at experimental interactions with each other, as well as the environment and the professional context that you are in, is something that is always going to be much coveted by employers, by people in industry who want to do business with you. So engaging in that process. So think about all those stakeholders whom you will have those interactions with, and therefore have to engage with and impress, but also participate with, have that open conversation. So all of these skill sets is definitely part of what we should be trying to strive to achieve as individuals. If you think about negotiations, if you think about trying to price something on the stock exchange, it's not just about what we've read, it's what we can do with our knowledge and actually apply it to the situation as well. And that's got to come from experience. That's got to come from having done it, not just reading about it, but doing it and practicing it. So this is where actually simulations can come into play. So simulations, if we think to the medical profession, for example, there's lots of simulation, role play. There is practice of injections, taking blood, doing all of the interactivity that you would expect from a medical professional. So sort of with roots coming in from there, we can also apply it very much within any other discipline or industry as well. Management, we have engineering, mathematics, all of the STEM subjects. So all of these areas lend themselves really nicely for an environment that really helps to produce organic, fundamental, individual learning environments. So, real life characteristics and events and situations to simulate that, but still within a safe environment, is an educational dream. So, where simulations not really heard of, not really used or underutilized, I think it's such a shame, because there's so much that we can actually do as an educational tool that we don't necessarily have to be physically close by with each other. We can use technology, as we were saying earlier on, to help actually bring to life some of these eventualities, some of these situations that we may have found a little bit more difficult to replicate in real life. And also, just to add to that, here is some other literature that kind of gives the advocacy of why simulations are great opportunities for learning. We can alter, we can adjust, we can learn from mistakes, as we said, along the way, and practice the learning experience too. So this also includes, virtual reality is also an amazing area which could be used so advantageously in so many different areas too, not just in the medical profession, which they are currently doing, but actually we can use them to simulate and role play meetings, negotiations, various different scenarios of dealing with difficult customers, dealing with different clients, and so on and so forth. So the act of a simulation, be it one where you're physically trying to practice something, an operation, or follow through with a management process or a management theory. All of these are amazing, safe environments to do that. And just kind of thinking back on that critical thinking and the problem solving, that is the goal of all programs, whether they are at a professional level or not. We always have to bear in mind that critical thinking and problem solving is probably one of the number one things that we are missing a lot of in today's education sphere. So active role playing, an active role that you as a learner must take will only be the way that you can develop these skill sets. And thinking about epistemic, I always forget to pronounce that correctly, but so epistemic, Semitic activities. So these are sort of discussions organized as part of a learning community that helps to advance our inquiry in reflective and indexical and contextual ways, right? So indexical basically just means sort of identifying content, but recognizing that it applies within very different and very specific contexts. So thinking about receiving a report and the information or the data in it as a HR director, your interpretation, your take will be very different to a chief financial officer, for example, or the operations director. And each of these have very valid ways in which they will interpret the information, but they will be using them in very specific circumstances. And, you know, that kind of experience cannot be faked in a journal article or a specified reading. So we have to actually do in order to truly appreciate the nuances. Just kind of moving on to this, the area where we're using it in real life. So ICARUS is a business simulation tool that I helped to develop. And it is app-based. It runs on mobiles as well as laptop devices, and it allows global learners as well as in-class learners come together and experience the learning that is much more than just content driven. So we deal with strategic challenges, we look at financial planning, all of the data and information analysis that goes with that, but we also look at teamwork and leadership and decision making and so many other types of outcomes that we are trying to achieve as well. So, you know, this is a very generic kind of slide here that could actually apply to any instance through which a simulation is being utilized in a learning context. So just a little bit more information about EQUEST, because it's actually on the programs that I'll be talking about in a moment. We've actually used it on, I should change that, it's not just 6,000 learners across the years, it's probably over 7,000, maybe coming towards 8,000. So we've used this simulation both for longer term courses, but also short-term half-day training as well for executive education programs and senior leadership programs. We've worked with Harvard, we've worked with a well-known other type of commercial organization, I can't really name the name, and used it with their executives, used it on their leadership programs, and with great results. The idea that being able to come together with your colleagues in that safe environment and actually get to know them also starts to bring about other things that you're learning about yourself and your colleagues that you are working with on that day-to-day basis. ICARUS has actually won an award back in 2017. We won gold prize in the UK Learning Technologies for best simulation. So this particular success story is very close to home for me, but I am a true believer in general simulation education as well, or simulation use in education, I should say. Here are just some few quotes from some of our users of the simulation and the whole learning experience, actually, that we had set out to achieve as learning outcomes, or just outcomes from the learning experience, but actually from their own mouths, we were able to really see the impact that it has had on their learning experience, on their character, on their own motivational journey as they are growing as professionals. So even as a new parent, I think the simulation was able to help with also time management for that particular individual there. So it was a very powerful tool in that sense. So even if, you don't necessarily go onto a program that has a simulation, I think actually within a work context, which I've been able to develop programs for with colleagues, we've developed these bespoke programs using simulation as part of that learning process, and teams, managers, individual employees as well have become better for it. They've learned so much more than just, let's say, financial planning, but they've learned so much about themselves and their colleagues and the way in which they have to interact, but also how they can move forward together. So that's pretty much all I wanted to convey to you today. So that's all I have for the session on simulations. And I think Stephanie's just come back on screen to either remind me of the time or say something else to me.
No, because you were mentioning about the questions, I was just going to let the audience know that if you have any questions, just feel free to type them in the chat, or if you want to just unmute yourself and speak with us or discuss on it, just feel free to unmute yourself as well. But thank you so much for the insightful sharing. I think we learned about what real learning is, and also how the simulation work. And as you mentioned, it's not just only for learning, but it's also what we can use in the workplace. So yeah, hopefully one day we can use the app that you have introduced.
Yeah, I was going to say, Stephanie, if I had more time this session, I'd actually play a game with everyone here. Unfortunately,
Okay.
the session's pretty short, so
No worries. I think we can actually spare about maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Will that be enough for the game?
probably not. We need a little bit longer, bit of setup time and stuff as well.
Sure, no worries. Okay, I think while everyone is maybe thinking of the questions that they want to ask, we'll just wait for maybe one more minute. If not, we can continue on with the program briefing, and let's see if we have enough time afterwards. Maybe, yeah, we can explore into something like that. But yeah, I would really love to so do something interactive and see the simulation in real life as well. But yeah, okay, I think everyone is still thinking of it. So maybe we can move on to the program briefing. Yeah. So the program briefing will be for our master's program. So just for the audience, just to introduce back to you all, this will be on the suite of Master of Science in Professional Accountancy and Master of Science in Accounting and Financial Management programs available here in SIM. So now I'll pass it over back to you, Renzi, to share a little bit more about the program briefing. Thank you.
Absolutely, Stephanie. So
Yes.
the two programs, I will give you a brief overview here. As Stephanie said, SIM provides a face-to-face environment that is obviously very conducive and very rich for learning. And we've worked with SIM for a number of years now to deliver good programs on behalf of University of London. So I'm just going to share the slide deck that goes with this portion. Can you guys see that? Yeah, good. Okay, so I'll first talk about the overall. So University of London, if you don't know already, it was founded back in 1836. So in London, I think most of the SIM team have probably been and visited pre-pandemic, of course, the headquarters of University of London down in Senate House, just across the road from one of my offices, actually, at UCL. So this is UOL. This is Senate House actually itself, the picture of it. And, one of the greatest things that I love being part of is the idea of the deep history that we have, where we, University of London, University College London, UCL, was always of the opinion that regardless of your race, your creed, your religion, everything that may cause friction between people who are perhaps not understanding. Education is for all, regardless of these various different characteristics. So I'm very proud to be part of that type of family. And actually, here is my immediate family at UCL. So this is our Bloomsbury campus, which is sort of across the road from University of London. But I'm actually based out in Canary Wharf, as part of the UCL School of Management. So UCL School of Management provides the academic direction for these particular programs that I'll be talking about with you today. And just a few facts and figures about UCL there. Fourth in the world for EQUEST World University Ranking. So very proud to be part of the institution. And our collaboration between us three, UOL, UCL, and SIM. SIM is one of our recognised teaching centres to provide that local tuition if you are in Singapore or can get to Singapore. So this is the first program I'd like to talk about. So this is the Professional Accountancy program. This is MPAC, which I love to refer to it as, and it's basically my baby. So I'm the program director for this program, and we've been working with SIM for the last sort of 5-6 years maybe, and continuing our relationship. So the Masters in Professional Accountancy is a master's level qualification, and it allows those who have already qualified as an accountant from a recognized body to come and do 60 credits with us, so that they can gain the Master's Award. So they're building on their previous recognised learning from their professional accountancy qualification and bringing that forward, adding another 60 credits, so that's 30 credits because it's 2 option modules and then a capstone project module, which is another 30 credits. So in the UK for a master's, you need 180 credits altogether, and basically your professional qualification counts for 120, therefore you need another 60. So the 60 comes in the form of 2 option modules and your capstone project. There are no exams on this particular program. I don't know if that's probably a sigh of relief, but actually moving away from rote learning from that perspective and actually showing applied learning through coursework and project is the way that we prefer to assess on this program. And pass mark for master's level is, of course, 50% minimum. This is just to give you an oversight of the SIM kind of way in which they would like to possibly structure the way that they deliver. So if you're interested in the program, then you can come to SIM and they will give you sort of a nice timetable of good pacing, I should add, a good level of commitment, dedication, motivation, but also they'll keep you anchored across the 3 months for each of the sessions. Each session is actually 10 weeks, 10 topics, and therefore that's sort of the 3-month period that they're talking about there. So one of the really attractive things about this, not just from a content perspective and what you can do with a degree from University of London thereafter, is actually that you can finish this in 6 months. So the minimum time, if you were to go for it full-time, is a 6-month period, and your registration is actually for a full 5 years if you need the 5 years to complete. But if you're going for part-time, then you can complete the program in 12 months. So for anyone who is working hard at the same time, wants to have a life, but also a family, and wants to study, then there are ways in which we can help you get through all of that, as long as you're on board with your dedication as well. So just to give you a kind of a feel for what that could look like if you're taking full-time study or part-time. And here again, and I think SIM will probably be able to make available to you some of the more intricate details such as this. So don't worry if you haven't got enough time to take on board all of this information. But they are, of course, kind of designing the face-to-face delivery support for the program according to their resources, but also what's quite popular with students in terms of timings for the program. Okay, so what you'll actually get from this program is not just, as I said, the academic side of things, but we also, much like I was saying before, we want to make sure that we have real other types of learning as well as domain-specific, content-specific learning. So we are looking for that rounded individual as opposed to just someone who can read a lot, if I'm really honest. So team working skills, those leadership skills, very much what you need in any environment, whether you're going into the commercial sector or the public non-profit sector. You will always have to have those skill sets that we were talking about before, the critical thinking, the analytical side of things, being reflective as an individual and as a professional is always going to be a prevalent type of characteristic that we should always strive for, every single one of us, no matter what stage of life that we are in. If we have the opportunity, we should grab it with both hands, I think. But that's just a personal sort of philosophy there. So an understanding, obviously, the financial and strategic dimensions is going to be key, because if you want to progress up the ladder, if you want to be in those good grown-up conversations, then having the understanding, having the academic and professional qualifications is what's going to get you heard. As well as being able to do it on the job as well. The entry requirements, so I mentioned that you need to be an active member, so qualified from a professional body that we have a list of. And this is that list at the moment. So again, on the website, you probably can get a little more time to appreciate which body and applicant status you may carry. So I'll just move on to this. Here are some of the fees that we or SIM have. And I can, again, if you have any questions about the fees, you can probably ask SIM for a little bit more detail, but just to flash it up for you up on the screen, that's what it would look like if you were to take the MPAC program. Okay. If there are any specific questions about MPAC, please do drop a note in the chat or wait to the end. But I'd like to now talk to you about another program which I was the development program director. So along with another colleague and our team put this together to be accessible for those who are not qualified accountants, which some of you may be of that kind of profile. So this is accounting and financial management, and we refer to this one as MAFM. You can tell that we love our acronyms, MPAC and MAFM, and I'm from SOM, School of Management, and I'm from UCL, University College London. This program, because there's no prior recognition, it's a bigger, longer program by its very nature. So you actually have 10 compulsory modules, and then you have a final project. Some of these modules are actually shared with the MPAC program, but you have to get through, I guess, the foundational side of things first and then build your way up to catch up and to go for the more advanced modules there. So you can see by the very nature of the names of these modules, it is exactly what it says on the label, accounting and financial management, but actually very applied to industry as well. So if you want a little bit more information about the program structure, then the University of London website will give you that. Now we are we launched this program actually in October 2021. Much like MPAC, we are having intakes every April and every October, and I believe SIM intake is going to start from sort of mid-May, late May time. So give you a little bit of time to explore and then put your applications in. For the MAFM program, you've got sort of a 18-month duration. It is a longer, more lengthy type of program. And, you know, as I said before, you've got those 10 modules plus that capstone one as well. And again, there are no exams per se, but there is some online open book tests that you will do for the first 5 modules, which if you have questions about, I can tell you about in more detail. And again, another example of how SIM would structure the delivery with you if you were to take on the MAFM and join the MAFM program. As I said before, each of the modules are 10 weeks long. We journey in real time, so the session will start in April, for example, and we will continue for 10 weeks. A little break, and then we start another session in the second week of July, and then continuing again in October and then January. So there's sort of a 4-session cycle every sort of 10 weeks in duration. So this all can be achievable over a year and a half duration for a whole master's program there. And here are just some of the things that I would wholeheartedly agree with SIM on why MAFM is the type of program for someone like you. So if you don't come from a particularly specialized accounting or finance background, but actually recognizing that accounting and finance is the language that threads everything together for an organization. So having good grounding in that is something that everyone, as you go up your career ladder, will have to appreciate. If you want to take part in the conversations, in the debates, and really have good amount of knowledge and confidence to be able to really feed into those decision-making processes, then you have to know a little bit about accounting and financial management. So that's what this degree does. It allows you to kind of appreciate those core principles, the processes, the theory, the applicability to different contexts, but from a financial management type of perspective. So, you know, it's going to be, no matter what your background is, for you to build upon that with some specific accounting and finance knowledge is only going to add to your career and only going to add to your profile, your professional profile. So we'll be covering, you know, there's financial ideas, the models, techniques, but also I'm big on this. It's all about that creativity, that critical thinking, that problem solving as well. And at master's level, that type of learning is meant to be achievable, but we really do make sure that we work hard to get there. And that's all just for your benefit and not ours. And it's just helping to create a really dynamic learning program for you. The entry requirements for MAFM is that you need at least a upper 2-1, so second class honours, so that's a 2-1 degree from for your bachelor's from any university or equivalent, and then a 6.5 for your IELTS for your English equivalency. Okay, so everything is done in English, so we need to just make sure that the proficiency is there, of course. Okay, and again, just so you can get a glance of the sort of the price point for this program. Is a bigger program, so therefore it is going to be a bit more in terms of the cost overall for compared to NPAC, but they are both of different in nature, different sort of focus and different audience that they are aimed at. But they both deliver very much on being applied, being able to develop you as a worthy individual for those career making roles in your future. So that's a look at what the fees estimate looks like for MAFM there. Just a little bit more on the other admin stuff. So if you do the program with SIM, you are still gaining your University of London degree award. So this is kind of what that certificate looks like, and it sort of says just underneath the wording there, it says that UCL, University College London, has been the ones who provided the academic direction or the assessments and things. So it will say that it's a Masters of Science. Obviously, you're all going to get distinctions if you're coming onto the program, and then obviously the name of the program as well. So if it was accounting and financial management, then it would say accounting and financial management. Okay, and I believe you get a signature from the Vice Chancellor of University of London, right? And then you also get an SIM statement of academic completion, which you can also very proudly put on your mantelpiece or framed very nicely and put on your wall. And of course, a letter from SIM just to show that you were in attendance and that you achieved what you set out to achieve. Okay. There we go. So application is going to be opening soon. I mentioned sort of mid-May, end of May. So check out SIM's webpage, have a look at the University of London webpage for a bit more information about the programs. And we'll be hosting some webinars for the programs as well. This summer, so please come and join us and look out for any emails from University of London about that type of engagement, and more than happy to answer any questions about the two programs. And that's all I've got for this one.
And of course, our new program details will be made available very soon, and also the application is opening soon. So do keep a lookout for that. And if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to us via email or call us at our hotline inquiry. And thank you, and have a great evening and a long weekend to everyone here. Okay, then.
Good stuff. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good
I'll
one.
end the
Bye.
session now.